Good morning, children, and welcome back. This is class 6, subject Social Science, chapter number 10 of History. We are going to start, and the name of the chapter is Traders, Kings, and Pilgrims. So, we are going to discuss about the topics traders, how the trade was done during that particular time, then kings of those were developed during that time, and pilgrims, and after that bhakti. So these are the main topics that we will be covering in chapter number 10 of history. Now let's see the topics that we'll cover in first lecture. As it is our first lecture, topics to be discussed in today's lecture are trade and trade route. Second, kingdoms along the coasts. Then southern coast of India we are talking about here. Number 3, Satavahanas, one of the kingdom there in western part of India. Number 4, story of Silk Route, in which we will study how the technique of making silk it was developed and what was the route for the silk route that during that particular time from China to western part of Asia. So that we'll discuss, and at last we'll take some of the questions as homework that will be on the basis of topics covered in today's lecture. So let's take the topics one by one. Trade and traders. Firstly, you must know the meaning of trade and traders before starting about the traders. The first part of the chapter. Traders are the people who bring the things from the place where they are made and sell them elsewhere for getting profit. So traders are the people who bring the things from the areas where the particular thing that is made or that is prepared. They sell that particular thing to another place for getting profit. So during that particular time also, the traders were the people who brought the things from the places where they were made and sold them the other places for the profit only. Now, what is this trade? How we define the trade? Trade is a basic economic concept involving the buying and selling of goods. Means buying or selling of the good, that is the process done there in trade. So this is the term trade and traders. So our first topic that we have done, the traders. So what type of evidences about trade were found by the archaeologists? Evidences of trade were found at several archaeological sites. Northern black polished ware was a fine pottery about which we have already covered in previous chapter. That northern black polished ware that was famous as NBPW. It was the fine type of pottery used in that time. So this pottery was found in several places, and it was assumed that it might be carried by traders from one place to another. So this was the clue for the archaeologist about the trade. That trade was going on during that particular time. Then Roman coins were also found in South India. So that was again one of the evidence with the archaeologists that these Roman coins they might brought there by the traders only. So these were some evidences. Now we'll take some more examples, like to find about trade and trade routes. Historians got evidences. So what type of evidences the historians got to prove that the trade was done during that time and what were the trade routes used by those traders. Firstly, they collected information about northern black policed wear, by which they came to know that northern black policed wear that was found in different places in different archaeological sites, and as we discussed, that was carried by the archaeologists to different sites. That's why they thought that the trade was done during that time. Second evidence, historians told that South India was famous for gold, spices, especially black pepper. Black pepper was highly valued in Roman Empire. As I told you that Roman coins were also found in the southern part of India, and the southern part of India that was famous for gold and spices, and the black pepper one of the spices, it was famous there in Roman Empire. Even it was known as the black gold there in Roman Empire. So obviously by this thing we come to know, or the archaeologists they came to know, that the trade was done with Roman Empire. So this black pepper, it was known as black gold in Roman Empire. So the trade was done between Indian subcontinent and Roman Empire. The other evidence, historians found evidences of trade in Sangam poems also. Sangam poems as Tamil literature we have covered in previous chapter. So in those Sangam poems, the evidences of trade that was found by the archaeologists, one more evidence it was that about which they can think that that the trade was done by the traders there. Now the trade route. Traders explored several sea routes. Some of these followed sea coast. Most of the traders they were using the sea routes during that time, and these sea routes basically were followed the sea coast. Means if you see the Indian map, you can see the southern part of India, the long coastal line it has. So along the coastal sea coast, several sea routes those were explored by the traders there. Means they were using those sea routes. So this is all about the trade and trade routes, the evidences that historians got about trade and trade route. This is the about trade. Now we'll see the example of trade there in Sangam poem. As I told you that evidences of trade were found in Sangam poems also, and one of the Sangam poem it has been given in our book also. Let's see that poem about trade. Swift prancing horses by sea in ships. The example, just see that different things they were famous in different areas, and those things were going and coming in different areas through trade. Bales of black pepper in carts. Bales means gaathe. So black pepper that in carts. Gems and gold born in the Himalaya. Sandalwood born in the western hills, and coral from eastern oceans, foodstuffs from Sri Lanka, pottery from Myanmar, and other rare and rich imports. So there by this poem it is shown that the import or export was done, means the trade was done between different places, and the trade that was done on different kinds of things over there. Black pepper was there, that was, we have already discussed that it was famous in Roman Empire. It was known as black gold. From Himalaya, gems and gold. Sandalwood there in the western hills. Corals in eastern oceans. Foodstuffs in Sri Lanka. Pottery from Myanmar. It was going to other places. So this poem, it is showing that the trade was done. That's why we have already covered that point there, that Sangam poem, there also the evidences of trade were also found there in Sangam poem. So this is one of the example for that only. Now our next topic is kingdoms along the coast. If you remember, we have done the chapter named Traders, Kings and Pilgrims. So traders and trade route we have already covered. Now kingdoms along the coast. Here we are talking about southern part of Indian subcontinent. We know that it has the long coastline. So which kingdoms they were famous during that particular time, near about 2300 years ago in southern part of India, and what type of the expeditions they were doing, what were they known as, that we'll discuss here. So kingdoms along the coast, the southern half of the subcontinents marked with long coastline, plateaus and river valleys. So we are talking about the southern part of India basically, that has the long coastline, plateaus and river valleys. And then Kaveri river valley is most fertile river valley, that during that particular time. We know that in southern part of India there are different rivers, Kaveri, Godavari, Mahanadi, Krishna. Okay, so here we are talking about the southern part of India, in that the different river valleys are there, and out of those all, Kaveri river valley is most fertile river valley. And the kingdoms or the kings, those who are there in southern part, they all wanted to have control over this river valley to get the profit only, because it was the fertile area. Kings wanted to control, her control will come, by mistake it is control is written. So kings wanted to control over the Kaveri river valley, because it was beneficial for them for agriculture, as it was fertile land. Then Moender, the very important word, just see what does it mean. Sangam poems mentioned Moender, which is a Tamil word. Its meaning is three chiefs. So what is this Moender? This is the word mentioned in Sangam poems, and it is basically the Tamil word. Its meaning is three chiefs. Now who are these three chiefs? Just see. It was used for three ruling families in south. They were Cholas, Cheras and Pandyas. These are basically three kingdoms there in southern part of India. So the Moonder word was used for these three ruling families, Chola, Chera and Pandyas. Now, they became powerful in South India around 2300 years ago. So these Mohenders, they became powerful near about 2300 years ago. These Mohenders were Cholas, Cheras and Pandyas. These three families had three centers of power. These three families had three centers of power. Here two centers of power will come, because the total six were there basically. All three families altogether were having six centers for power. Okay, so 3 3 here does not mean that every family had three. Every family, these out of these all three, Chola, Chera, Pandyas, they were having two main centers. One was inland center and one was the coast center. Means the major city they were having on coast of the sea, so that they could have control on the trade. The traders, those were coming through the sea routes, they could get the taxes or the tributes from those traders. So they were having one port city and one inland city. Those were important. And out of those all six cities, two were most important there. Here, out of six centers, two were very important. They were Puhar and Madurai in southern part of India. These two cities were most important out of six. As I told you, all three families or chiefs or movenders were having two main centers. One inland, that was inside one, you can say, and one was the port city, that was on the coastal areas. And out of all, Puhar and Madurai were most important. Puhar or Kaveri Patnam was the port city of Cholas and Madurai was the capital of Pandyas. So Puhar and it was known as Kaveri Patnam also. It was port city of Cholas. Okay, as I told you, one was port city, one was inland city, and Madurai was the capital of Pandyas. So these two were most important. Mohendos received gifts from the people instead of regular taxes. As we already talked about the taxes, that the kingdoms, they were collecting the taxes from the people, but here in Mohendos they did not have the regular taxes, they did not collect the regular taxes from the people. They were receiving gifts from the people instead of the regular taxes. Military expedition were organized by these three chiefs along the coasts. As I told you that they wanted to control on the coastal areas, that's why the military expedition they organized, so that they could have control on the coast. And the reason behind it, so that they could collect more taxes from the traders coming there to the coastal areas through sea routes. So that is about the Movender. The three chiefs that are in southern part of India, they were Cholas, Cheras, Pandyas, and they all wanted to have control on the coastal areas and the Kaveri river valley also, that was the fertile land. Clear? Then we have done two most important cities, those were Puhar and Madurai. Puhar was the port city of Cholas and Madurai was the capital of Pandyas. Clear? Then military expedition along the coastal line, the reason behind it, to have a control on the trade. That was most important. Then Satavahanas. This is one of the kingdom there in India, in western part of India, that was present. Okay, as the in chapter we talked about kings. So one we have already talked in southern part, Mohendos, the three kingdoms, three chiefs there, Cholas, Cheras and Pandyas. Second, now we are taking Satavahanas. Satavahanas, they developed there in western part of India. Now let's see about Satavahanas. A dynasty known as Satavahanas developed in western part of India. As I told you that Satavahanas developed in western part of India, the most important ruler of Satavahanas was Gautami Putra Sri Satkarni. So, in this Satavahanas dynasty, the most important ruler was Gautami Putra Sri Satkarni. His mother was Gautami Balashri. So, from his mother, he got the name Gautami Putra Sri Satkarni, as his mother was Gautami. So, Gautami Putra Sri Satkarni, he was the most important ruler of Satavahanas. Now, rulers of Satavahanas were known as Dakshinpatha, the lords of Dakshinpatha. So, rulers of Satavahanas like Gautami Putra Sri Satkarni, we have done, or other rulers also, they were known as the lords of the Dakshinpatha. Dakshin means that is for south direction, Path means the way. So they were the lords of Dakshinpatha, because the people, when they were going from north to south, obviously they were going through that way only. So that's why they were known as the lords of Dakshinpatha. Literally the route leading to the south, which was also used as name for entire southern region. Okay, that's why here for southern region it is used basically. So Dakshin means, in Hindi we speak Dakshin, to the south direction. So Dakshin Patha, the way to south, it was used. So they were known as the lords of the south way, or the Dakshin Patha. This is all about the Satavahanas that we talked about. They developed there in western part of India. Next is story of silk and silk route. This is one of the important part, or one of the important topic in this chapter. How the silk it was developed, and what route that was there here, as it was developed in China. Then from China, how it spread from to the other parts of the world. So that silk route, and it was very important that most of the kingdoms, they wanted to have control on silk route, so that they could get taxes and tributes from the traders. And let's discuss about the story of silk and silk route. Silk was highly valued fabric in most of the societies of that time. So silk in it was highly valued fabric, and the societies, basically the kings or the rich people, they were taking it as the highly valued fabric, and it was very famous during that particular time. Raw silk was obtained from the cocoons of silkworm. As what is the process? Firstly, the cocoon, the silk, it is obtained from the cocoons of the silkworm. Then that is changed into the thread, silk thread. Okay, and from that silk thread, obviously the silk cloth is made. So this is the process, how the raw silk it is obtained, and how then the clothes they are prepared. Technique of making silk were first invented or developed in China around 7,000 years ago. So what the techniques that we are having? Firstly, the technique that was developed there in China near about 7,000 years ago. And very interesting thing is this, that China, It had that technique secretly with it for many years. For many years, they did not tell the technique to anyone, but slowly and gradually, as the rulers from China, they gave the gifts of silk to other rulers in the western part of Asia, so they came to know about the silk technique. Let's see how it was the silk route there. Sometimes Chinese rulers sent gifts of silk to rulers in Iran and West Asia, and from there the knowledge of silk spread further west. You see that from China, the technique of the silk, as they sent the gift to the rulers. So obviously, whatever we are using, we are having the knowledge of that. So from the China, it came to Iran, and from Iran, then the knowledge it spread there in West Asia, and from there in the further west, or the other parts of the world. So this is the story, we can say, how the technique of silk it spread in different areas from China. Then it was very costly. People living along the route often demanded payments for allowing traders to pass through, as we have done that it was very costly. And the reason behind it, because the traders, when they were moving from different areas on the routes, they were demanded for the payments for going through that particular area. They were giving taxes and tributes to different kingdoms even for going through that particular kingdom. As if they are paying something, so obviously they will get that part, they will add that part to the cost only for which they are going. So the cost of the silk it was very high. Now some rulers tried to control routes. This was because they could benefit from tributes and taxes. So this was the reason. If the question is there, why did the rulers they want to control the silk route? So answer is because they could benefit from taxes and tribute. That's why they wanted to have the control over the silk route. In history, best known of the rulers who controlled the silk route were the Kushanas. If we talk about the most important rulers or the kingdom, those had the control over the silk route, they were Kushanas. We'll discuss about Kushanas also, okay? But that will be discussed in next lecture. Now it's time for homework. Today again we have a look on the topics that we have covered. We have taken the trade and trade routes, how the historians or the archaeologists they came to know about, they got the evidences of trade and trade routes. Then we talk about the next thing, that in Sangam poem, one of the poem that has been given, we discussed about that. Then kingdoms along the coast, they were Muendos, they were Chola, Chera and Pandyas. Then we have discussed about Satavahanas, those developed in western part of India. Then we discussed about the story of silk and silk route, how it was developed and what was the route of silk, how it spread from China to other parts. Clear? And most of the rulers wanted to have the control on silk route. The reason, so that they could get more and more taxes and tributes from the traders. So now on the basis of those topics, some questions I am going to give you here as homework that you will do there in the fair register. do the following questions. Question number 1, define moender. So I'll write here definition of moender. Number 2, why did kings want to control the silk route? The reason you'll write here. Number 3, what kinds of evidences do historians use to find out about trade and trade routes? Number 4, discuss the story of silk making and silk route. The complete story that we have discussed, you'll write here. Okay, that's just like a story. You just keep the points in your mind one after another, and you will write in points that story. Clear? So these are the questions that we'll do in your FAIR register. So that's it for today. We'll be meeting for the next lecture again. Thank you and have a nice day.